You know how nature's been sort of like giving us a hand by, absorbing our carbon emissions?
Mhm.
Well, get this. In 2023, it practically hit the pause button.
Yeah, that's right. It's a big deal. For the
Yeah.
first time, like ever, research shows that land-based ecosystems,
Like forests and stuff.
yeah, forests, grasslands, even your backyard garden, they absorbed almost zero net carbon dioxide in
Yeah.
2023.
Okay. So before we dive into why 2023 was so weird, can you give us a little more context on how unprecedented this is?
Absolutely. So this research is coming from some, top scientists in the field, and even they were shocked. I mean, one climate scientist called it like seeing cracks in the Earth's system. Yeah, with both land and oceans showing signs of like instability.
Okay, so cracks in the system, not good.
Right.
But why 2023? What happened that year that was so different?
Well, 2023 was just like a year of extreme weather events,
Yeah.
right? And that plays a huge role in how well these ecosystems can absorb CO2. Think about droughts, for instance.
Yeah.
When plants are, starved for water, they're not able to absorb carbon dioxide effectively.
So it's not just that they're taking in less CO2, it's impacting the whole process.
Exactly. In some cases, these like parched plants can actually become net emitters of carbon.
Wait, so they go from helping to hurting.
Yeah,
That's kind of terrifying.
it is a concerning shift. And then, of course, there's the issue of wildfires. Remember those intense scenes we saw in 2023?
Yeah.
They weren't just isolated incidents. Um, Research actually found that 2023 was like it saw the most extreme wildfires on record, even surpassing the combined intensity of the previous 6 years.
Wow. That's hard to even imagine. And I'm guessing all those fires didn't help the situation.
No, you're right. These fires release huge amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. One fire ecologist called it alarming, and honestly, it's hard to disagree.
So I've got droughts shutting down CO2 absorption, wildfires pumping even more carbon into the atmosphere. Not exactly a recipe for a healthy planet.
Not at all. Yeah. And what's even more concerning is that this particular study is focused on those like massive, intense wildfires. It didn't even factor in the less extreme but way more common savanna fires.
Oh, wow.
These smaller fires, they make up a significant portion of global burning, about 70%. So the actual impact of wildfires on CO2 absorption could be even more significant than this research suggests.
So even if we try to write off 2023 as a fluke, it's still a pretty alarming glimpse into a future where these extreme events are more frequent, more intense. And this whole idea ecosystems going from carbon absorbers to emitters, it really makes you think about other vulnerable areas like the Amazon rainforest, right?
Yeah, the Amazon is like a perfect example of an ecosystem that's nearing what scientists call a tipping point.
So when you say tipping point, you mean it'll start releasing more carbon than it absorbs.
Precisely. The Amazon's massive, right? And it plays this like vital role in regulating the global climate. But deforestation, wildfires, and the climate change itself are kind of pushing it closer and closer to a point of no return. Eventually, if these trends continue, the Amazon will go from a net absorber of carbon to a net emitter, releasing more CO2 than it takes in.
Okay, so the Amazon, one of Earth's largest carbon sinks, is in danger of becoming a carbon source. That's a pretty chilling thought, if you ask me. If the Amazon goes, are we, in serious trouble?
It's definitely a major concern. And, what's happening in the Amazon could be like a sign of things to come for other forests around the world. Think about it. If the Amazon, with its incredible biodiversity,
Nice.
right, and just its sheer scale, if it's struggling to cope with these pressures, what does that mean for other, maybe less resilient forests?
It's like a domino effect. And this all ties back to those extreme wildfires we were talking about earlier, right?
Absolutely. And it raises a really important question about how we approach wildfires going forward. Traditionally, the focus has been on suppression, putting out fires as quickly as possible. But there's this growing recognition that we need to learn to coexist with fire, especially in these naturally fire-prone landscapes.
So are you saying we should just let these places burn?
Yeah, not necessarily, no. It's not about letting them burn uncontrollably or anything. It's more about shifting from a mindset of, fighting against nature to one of adapting and even potentially utilizing these natural processes like fire to our advantage.
Okay. So working with fire, not just against it. How does that work in practice?
Well, controlled burns are a good example. These are intentionally set, carefully managed fires, and they can actually help prevent those massive, destructive wildfires by reducing the amount of flammable material. It's all about finding a balance, recognizing that fire can be, it can be destructive, but it can also be beneficial depending on how it's managed.
So it's kind of like instead of just trying to dominate nature. It's about understanding it, figuring out how to work within its boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. Recognizing that, like, these natural processes, they have their own power.
It's been a real eye-opener, this whole deep dive. We knew coming in that there'd be some tough news about climate change, but this idea that nature itself is struggling, that's a whole other level of unsettling.
It is unsettling, yeah. But it's also, like, I think it's a call to action, right? This knowledge, it empowers us to make better choices, more informed choices. If we know that nature's having a harder time absorbing our emissions, it kind of highlights how urgent it is that we transition away from, this carbon-intensive life.
So like we were saying before, it's not enough to just hope the drain gets bigger. We've got to turn down the tap.
Precisely. We have to go after the root causes here.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive into this kind of alarming trend of nature's ability to absorb CO2. We covered a lot, from those unprecedented events in 2023 to that potential tipping point for the Amazon rainforest, even how we think about wildfires. A lot to take in.
Yeah, a lot to consider, but, this is how we start to find solutions, right?
Yeah.
Understanding the complexities of the issue.
I couldn't agree more. And for all of you listening, we want to leave you with this. If nature's having a harder time absorbing our emissions, where does that leave us? How does that change our responsibility to, reduce those emissions in the first place? Food for thought. Until next time.